time for another UUOP podcast documentary, and over the course of this episode and the one in 2 weeks, we are going to find out why Halloween Horror Nights is such a big deal and means so much to its fan base. This is episode 475 of the Unofficial Universal Orlando podcast. Welcome everyone to another UUOP podcast documentary. I am your host Lee, and as I said in the intro, we are going to delve into why Halloween Horror Nights in Orlando means so much to so many people. Universal Orlando's Halloween Horror Night event is the industry standard for haunt events, and with the help of my 7 guests, we're going to find out why it is so special. So let's get on with it. So Halloween Horror Nights began at Universal Studios Florida way back in 1991 with the very first Fright Nights, and this year celebrates its 30th anniversary with Halloween Horror Nights 30. And I thought, what better time to pull the trigger on a Halloween Horror Nights podcast documentary. So the first thing I need to do is let my guests introduce themselves to you.
Hey, this is Harry from Freaks of Halloween Horror Nights. We cover mostly like HHN, Howl-O-Scream, independent haunts all over Florida and throughout the country as well.
Hi, I'm Kenneth. I am one of the co-hosts of the Rush of Fear podcast. Also, I am one of the guitarists and backup singers in the band Pangolin, and also a co-host on the Dream Jerks podcast about DreamWorks animation.
Hi, my name is Hunter Fagan. I am the current lead host of the Catacombs of Halloween Horror Nights over on the 2.0 version of that. And I also do a pop culture adult podcast called Grim Grinning Hosts. And then I also do a Disney movie review podcast. That's not important to this, but hey, you know what? I'm a sucker and I'm a shill for some nice plugs. So I'm going to go ahead and throw that in there.
Hi guys, I'm Maddie from the Rush of Fear podcast.
Hi, everybody. My name is Johnny Bronto. I run HauntScene.com out of Orlando, Florida. We are a travel show for haunted attractions and other spooky stuff.
Hello, everybody. I am Michelle from Muggle Travel Company, the Unofficial Universal Orlando podcast, and the Rush of Fear podcast.
Hello, my name is Sean. I live in Central Florida, and I'm part of the team that runs the HNNightmares account. My 2 primary responsibilities are planning and organizing HHN at home and compiling all the information I can from social media and forums to bring you those now infamous speculation maps every year.
Okay, so moving on, we all remember that first time we visited Halloween Horror Nights. For me, it was 2004. Tracy and I discovered this event, Halloween Horror Nights, while researching our first trip to the States, our first trip to Orlando. We went opening night, October 1st, to Halloween Horror Nights 14 and completely fell in love with the event. It was unlike anything that we had ever experienced in the UK. To be fair, the UK was way behind the US just in Halloween terms, let alone scare attractions. We're catching up slowly but surely. There are some great haunts over here now. But the US are still the industry standard. But we fell in love with Halloween Horror Nights, and now not going every year absolutely kills us. So the first thing we need to let you know about our guests is their history with the event to give you an overall better sense of their knowledge of Halloween Horror Nights and their passion for it. So the first question I asked them all was, when did you first visit Halloween Horror Nights in Orlando? What was it that drove you to visit the event that first time? And how many times have you gone since?
All right, so my first year was 1998. The reason I went is my sister actually was going from like 95 and up, and she said, you really need to come check out this event. I don't know if I was scared before going in 98, but I just remember going that first year and just fell in love, and gone 23 years since, and I wouldn't miss it for anything. I mean, I would love to have gone to the first couple of events. I wish I would have been, talked into it before that. Most times when you say 23 years, most people go, oh my God, that's incredible. It's crazy. It's just a passion. It's just family and meeting friends and people from all over. And every year people just continue to come back and return, and we all hang out and have a good laugh, good time. But I mean, in the beginning we would, go like maybe one weekend, we'd pick a weekend and we'd go up on a Saturday. And, back then it really didn't, it was only like 1 month. It wasn't the whole like it is now. And we pick a weekend, go up on a Friday, go on Saturday night to Horror Nights by the Express, and then check out on Sunday and come home. And since like 24 or 25, we've been going probably like 20 nights a year. And in 2019, I think I went like 34 nights or something like that.
The first year I visited Halloween Horror Nights was 2005. That was the Storyteller / Terra Cruentus year. And the thing that got me to finally go, because I had been observing the event from outside, very scared of it, but also very fascinated with it. But I never actually wanted to go until I was in 9th grade. And my girlfriend at the time was like, hey, we're going to go to Halloween Horror Nights. And I said, okay, I guess I'm finally going to go do this thing. So that's what it was. It was a 9th grade girlfriend who dragged me along. And since then, I have only missed 1 year of the event, which was 2012. So that would have meant I've gone to 2005, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. So I've gone to 15 years of Horror Nights, or this will be my 15th year.
So my first year visiting, in event years, it seems like it wasn't that long ago, but I've been attending for over a decade now, which is crazy to say. My first year was during 25, and what really drove me out there for that is, during 23, I was covering it on this very show with all of you guys, and 23 featured my favorite horror movie of all time, which is An American Werewolf in London. And I've spoken on that several shows and podcasts and everything like that. And the reason being is I just think it's the pinnacle of 80s horror. It's not only that, but it's a beautiful comedy film. There's so much to love about it. And during 23, I was kind of edging it the whole season. I was like, should I dip my toe in? And then I pulled my toe out, and then I did the hokey pokey. And I never ended up making it during HHN 23. I couldn't get over my anxiety about the event, fear of the event, whatever it might be. 24 came. I was like, oh man, Alien versus Predator, that's cool, but it's not An American Werewolf in London. And 24 just kind of slipped on through the cracks for me. Then 25 came around. And with 25 came the announcement, the highest rated house of all time returns to Halloween Horror Nights. And that, of course, was in reference to An American Werewolf in London. Couple this with the announcement, this was Jack's big return year. And, it's fun. We're celebrating that again this year. But yeah, it was the announcement that An American Werewolf in London was coming back. And I took it as a sign, divine intervention, if you will, whether that be God, Buddha, Jack the Clown, whoever it might be. I took it as a sign, and I was like, hey, there's something here. I got to go check this thing out. So bought an event ticket. I remember very distinctly. I was at work. We pulled up at like 8:00 at night, which, as we all know, is a big no-no now. But we did them Coca-Cola tickets. We ran next door to the grocery store and got the coupon code from a package of Coca-Cola, went on the website, bought those single night tickets. I said, hey, if I get through one thing, I'm going through An American Werewolf in London. And that was just, and I had experience. This was when Inside the Magic was actually something worth a damn. And I had seen their video several times of An American Werewolf in London. So I knew what to expect. But man, just completely rattled me. I was not ready. But that experience, it only takes one good house run through to pull you in. And, you might still have anxiety for the rest of the evening. You might still be frightened for the rest of the evening, whatever it might be. But you really start to understand what HHN is all about with that. So An American Werewolf in London cemented it for me. Right now, we've got some real tough competition this year that's going to shift around my rankings. But right now, it's still in my top 5 houses of all time. And without, the John Landis film, I wouldn't be here talking to you about this right now. This year, if I've done my math correctly, I have either gone over or will be in like the next week or two, my 100th night of HHN, which is pretty nuts. I have done, of course, 25. I believe it was a 2-night run during that. I didn't have Frequent Fear. 26 started at Frequent Fear Plus, and that carried on over into finally this year, which I was fortunate enough to check out opening weekend. And I was at HHN Light, which we can't really count. It's during normal business operating hours or whatever. But yes, I did fully attend that event, opening day, closing day, everything like that. So yeah, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, HHN Light, and now we are into 30.
So first time visiting Horror Nights in Orlando, it was HHN 27. I'm a late bloomer. It's fine. But my little sister and I was in college at the time, and I was up in college in Maine, and I'm born and raised in South Florida. So it was a bit harder to come visit all the time. Like I never came home for Thanksgiving or Easter or any of that kind of stuff. But Columbus Day weekend of that year, my little sister, a few weeks before, was like, hey, I really want to go to Halloween Horror Nights. And I was like, word, okay, sounds good. So I flew home for the little 2-day weekend. I flew into Orlando, and my sister had drove up from my hometown to meet me in Orlando. We stayed at Cabana Bay. We had a single night ticket and an express pass because my dad, my dear father, was so worried about us not being able to go through all the houses without an express pass. And he was like, you're only going to be there for one night. Like he's such a caring man. And he just wanted us to be able to experience it and have fun and not worry about not seeing everything or trying to plan our day around waiting in lines. So he got us the express pass, which was amazing. We had dinner at Twosomes, and then we went into the event. We finished every single house, attraction. We watched the Academy of Villains, and we were done. And we had done things multiple times too. I went through American Horror Story, I think 3 times. We were done with all of that by 10:45. It was fantastic. And we were like, okay, should we go? Because we didn't know. We did not know any better. It was a 2 a.m. night, but we were like, what are we going to do? We've done everything 3 times. So that was my first year. Growing up, and I talked about this on the Rush of Fear podcast on that first episode. Growing up, I had always wanted to go to Horror Nights. Always, always, always. The first time I ever knew what it was, I was in the park with my dad for just a day at Universal. And it was right in the middle of the Horror Nights event. And so all over the place, there was this stuff out for the scare zones. There were signs and all the things for the houses and stuff. And this was before they would cover them up. So it was just there was the house sign just chilling. And I was like, Dad, what is this? And he told me what Halloween Horror Nights was. And this was the year of Freddy, Jason, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I don't even know what year that would have been. 15? I don't know. I was like, I want to go. This sounds so cool. I had never seen a horror movie in my life at that point. I was 9. And I was like, I want to go. He was like, okay. We'll go home. We'll research it. We'll look at getting tickets. I think he lied to me. I don't think he ever bought the tickets because he knew I would chicken out. But the day before we were supposed to go, I was like, Dad, I don't think I can do it. I'm too scared. And I kid you not, that exact thing happened every single year up until the year that my sister and I actually went. And I'm now so mad at myself because I was, in fact, not the scared one, but I was the protector of my little sister who was crying her eyes out as we went through these houses. And I was Heisman Trophy style, holding her like a football and one arm out to the scare actors, don't you touch her. And that's where we are right now. I could have been going this whole time, my whole life, but decided to chicken out. And now it's my absolute favorite thing. And I cannot imagine not going to Halloween Horror Nights. But yeah. And I visited every year since 27 because I now live in Orlando. So.
Well, my first year of Halloween Horror Nights was 2008, the Bloody Mary year, and I had just moved to Florida, and I had heard of the event, but my coworkers are the ones that actually dragged me to the event, and I was 28, 29, somewhere in there. I have to look at the dates, but yeah, in my late 20s. It absolutely blew my mind. Just every sense on complete overload. Loved the event, loved the scare zones, loved hanging out with my friends. It was one of my favorite nights all time, and I've been going every year since.
My first visit to Halloween Horror Nights was HHN 25, which was a great year to go as a first event. I mean, that was an anniversary event, and it was incredible. What drove me to go there, actually, being a travel agent, we sell it, and I didn't sell a lot of it because I was afraid to go. But I figured, I really should go and try it out because I hear it's amazing, but I'm a big chicken. So I was really on the fence about whether or not to go. And then Robin, who is my business partner with Mouse and Muggle, at the time we were with a different agency though. We were there for an agency trip in Orlando at Disney World, and we kept on, going back and forth. Should we try Halloween Horror Nights while we're there? Should we not? Finally, Robin was like, you know what? Let's just do it. Let's just rip off the Band-Aid and do it. And so we bought tickets. And funny enough, I actually reached out to the Universal Orlando podcast. At the time, I was just a listener, and said, this is my first time going to the event. What are your tips? Darren said flat out, you have to have Express Pass. So we splurged on Express Pass, and we went for the night, and it was incredible. I will be honest and tell you that I don't remember most of the houses because my eyes were completely shut. I did really enjoy the scare zones though. I just remember the first time we got there pretty early, and we were towards the front of the gates with all the crowds waiting to go in. And I was so scared. I mean, like a little baby scared. But, we were watching the clock, and the crowds were getting loud and exciting, and the fog started, the music started. We could start seeing the scare actors come out, and I was like, oh my God, what did I do? And I was panicking. And then we walked in, and there were guys with chainsaws jumping at us from every angle. I was screaming my head off, running. It was ridiculous. But by the end of the night, we actually were wanting to get scared in the scare zones. We were actually going into the scare zones just to watch other people get scared and run off. And it was a fun night. Again, don't really remember much about the houses at all, but I do know the scare zones that started one of my love for scare zones for sure. And it was a great year. So that was my first year, was HHN 25, and I've been every year since. So this will be 30. So that makes it 6 years total. I will never miss another event ever. Like it's just a given now that I do this trip regardless. I mean, I could be homeless and still make it to this event. It's just that important to me. So,
well, the first time I went to Halloween Horror Nights was in 2001, and I was 13 years old, and it was just something we decided to do on a whim. We were spending the day at the park with my family, and we kept seeing all the billboards around the park advertising this thing called Halloween Horror Nights. And my sister and I grew up in a household where Halloween was the holiday of holidays. We loved it. So naturally, to say we were interested would be a bit of an understatement. So the entire day, we just basically harassed our parents to go, and eventually they agreed. So that night, we returned to the park, and my sister and I realized we had made a horrible mistake. We hated it. We went through 2 houses, my first house ever, which was Scary Tales, and another house called Superstitions. And we then proceeded to have a mental breakdown. And then my parents were like, okay, well, we're still going to enjoy the event because they paid a lot of money for it. So my sister and I just sat in Louis at a table, just looking outside at the scare zone. And at one point, Jack walked by with a megaphone, which it didn't go over well with my sister. But, it was what it was. And after that, my dad swore we would never go back again. It was a waste of money. They enjoyed it, but they couldn't enjoy it as much as they wanted to because we were just having a miserable time. And then it wasn't until 4 years later in 2005 where, after I was following the website for the entire time, I was able to convince my family to give it a second chance. And then the rest is history. And then I've been going for 17 years now this year.
Have you taken a stroll down Diagon Alley and visited Gringotts Bank? Taken a ride through New York with Jimmy Fallon? Visited the Truffula trees in Seuss Landing or hung out with a real-life Transformer? No? Then what are you waiting for? At Universal Orlando Resort, there truly is an option for everyone. Or if you're leaning a little more towards pixie dust rather than wands and potions, Disney destinations around the globe await your arrival. No matter the adventure, our sponsors have you covered. Be sure to let the experts at Mouse and Muggle Travel Company take care of all your travel needs, earning the distinction of being an earmarked agency specializing in Disney destinations, as well as becoming one of the first to be named a You Preferred agency with Universal Parks and Resorts Vacations. Mouse and Muggle Travel Company will ensure you receive top-rated customer service. Just visit mouseandmuggle.com to fill out a no-obligation quote request, or send your request to info@mouseandmuggle.com. Their team can take care of you no matter where in the world you want to go. With a flick of their wand and a little bit of pixie dust, the process will be so seamless, some might even say it's simply magical.
Now look, Halloween Horror Nights is many things to many people, but first and foremost, it is a scare attraction. Personally, anyone who's listened to the show will know, I rarely get scared at a scare attraction, but especially Halloween Horror Nights. I would love to be able to get that full experience, but I just don't. Tracy doesn't, as you know, you listen to the podcast. Chris doesn't. Michelle used to. This year, a bit of a change. We use the term to describe most of us as being dead inside. But there are many, many different people who visit the event, from the people we have seen cowering in the corners crying, to those who get that scared they fall on the floor. And from scare actor friends, we've heard people who expulse, if that's a word, bodily functions during scare attractions. There's also people who, when getting scared, will scream obscenities in your ear. Michelle, I am looking at you. So as I've said, I am a one scare an event kind of guy. But there are many, many different types of people, as I've said. So I asked my guests, what type of Halloween Horror Nights guest are you? Are you a screamer? Or are you a, oh man, that facade is amazing. How good is that set? That set piece killed it, man. That scare didn't get me, but I appreciate it. It was awesome.
I love the sets and all the scenic and the pieces, and just like walking through and taking my time and just looking at, appreciating what they've done. I mean, some people, they like the jump scares and stuff. I maybe get scared once or twice throughout the entire thing. I got it the first night, Legendary Truth. I was filming, of course, because, you know, obviously we were allowed to as media, and I turned the corner with my phone. I looked up and there was like this big monster there, and my phone, it was funny because my phone, you could see it on the video, like turn and almost drop to the ground, and I caught it, but I was like, you got me. I'm like, you got me. But just seeing how well done, like a certain house, or like walking into a movie when they do, you know, like the IPs and stuff, and just, hey, I grew up with this stuff and I see it come to life. So I am definitely like a scenic person. That's what I go for more than anything. The sets, the scenes, all that wonderful stuff that they put into it, and all the effort and the smells, and, you know, just everything that they do to make it come to life. It's just so incredible.
I am somewhere in the middle of those two choices. And also it changes throughout the course of the event. So my first couple times through a house, I am very scarable. You know, I don't swear or like, you know, jump around like crazy or anything, but I definitely do get scared still after, you know, 15 years. I still get scared my like probably first 2 or 3 times going through any haunted house. And then after that point, I am kind of the like, ooh, look at that. You know, I'm kind of more now appreciating the design, analyzing the house as I walk through it to be like, okay, now what are they doing here? How did they set this scare up? What's, you know, what are they wanting me to look at? And how are they drawing my eye away from the real scare? And like, you know, kind of like observing and analyzing and appreciating the houses from a design level. After the first few times I've gotten my scares, I know where everything is now. And now I'm going to come in and be like, yeah, I really like this. They did a good job here. If I do get a good scare, it's kind of like, oh, that was good. You got me. You got me. That was a good one.
Yeah, so I am a scenic and detail appreciator. I definitely consider myself in that category because that's the reason I go to Halloween Horror Nights. There are other attractions all over Central Florida, all over the United States, all over the world that I would say, HHN has done a wonderful thing about it, fully immersing you in environments. But if you're there to get scared, your mileage may vary depending on what's there. And, with 10 haunted houses, there's always one house that's, like a really great regional haunt, scary house. But a lot of them are very scenic focused. And I think HHN serves its purpose as far as, it can definitely be scary, or you can just appreciate it on the scenic element. Now, that said, even though I'm going in there looking for detail and storylines and everything like that, I am somebody who is actively looking to get a good spook going through the houses. I am actively hoping to get something like that. And, this weekend, opening weekend or anything like that, this is the best time to do it because you haven't started locating where everything is. And it's just those houses that are going to end up higher for me are not only the houses that are scenically beautiful, but they have to deliver on the scare element as well. That's what I'm looking for. So I would say I'm in between, but I'm definitely more looking towards the aesthetic elements over the fright elements. When I am more likely to get my scares actually is even if I know where the scares are, if I am with someone and I'm focused on their reaction or how they're experiencing things, it's more of a case of, yes, I might know where things are in certain parts, but it's when I start to, I don't want to say zone out because that's not quite the right word, but when I am focused on the environments or I'm looking at the person I'm with or whatever it might be, that is the prime opportunity to get scared. I very, very rarely have gotten scared in a scare zone. I think I can count that probably like on two hands. But yeah, it's one of those things when I'm going through a haunted house and I am just enjoying the actual haunted house and not focused on the scares, that's when you're more likely to get me. And that's kind of what I'm looking for.
Oh man. I think for a majority of the event, I'm the like, oh hey, like that's pretty cool kind of thing. For the first run through, usually of the house for the year, obviously I have no idea what's coming. Like I can kind of tell where the boo holes, like the boo holes, that are going to be boo holes. Sometimes they are completely out of left field, like the Yeti arm that came down from the ceiling. No clue that was going to be there at all. So surprised. So the first time going through the house for the year, I think I'm definitely like a screamer, for sure. I'm not the like cower in fear kind of person. Like I can go through a house by myself and be totally fine. But for the rest of the event, I'm like, oh, hey, that's cool. Or like I'm going through the house and visiting friends. So that's always fun. I think one of the best memories I have of like a time going through a house where I'm like, oh, wait, this is so cool was team member preview of last year's like HHN Light. I was going through The Bride of Frankenstein, and this was like literally first day, first hour of team member preview. So they had no idea. They had no idea what they were doing. Bless their hearts. Like, because they had no clue of like how to kind of go about it. And the idea that we had going through the house, like the things that we had to do, did not last. They did not make it past team member preview. So I was stopped. In this one room of Bride of Frankenstein Lives. I won't spoil it because I know a lot of people didn't go through it. But it was a very, very large room with lots of stuff to talk about. And I was in that room for 5 minutes, just standing still, completely by myself, because no one, like the person behind me was in the other room because we couldn't be close to each other. The person in front of me was in that room because I couldn't be close to them. So it was just me by myself in my facial covering and 2 scare actors. And I had the time of my life. I was like, oh my God, that's cool. Look at what's in that glass jar. hi, scare actor. And like, she kept popping out. And then after a while, she noticed it, like, we were not moving. And so she just kind of was like, hey. But it was great. It was so much fun. So like, definitely like, once you get past the like scare factor, like if you're going like quite often and you kind of like know where things are, it's definitely more fun to be like looking at everything you possibly can. Although there are some times where like last night of the event, and there's a scare actor that is just going so hard and they will get me. And I'll just be like, that was fantastic. Thank you. Like I miss that.
So initially, when I went to Halloween Horror Nights, I was just a patron. I was just there to have fun with the event. But as I've grown in the haunted attraction industry, I've started to notice a little bit more that I tend to focus on the design of everything, how they pull off some of the effects. I'm always kind of peeking around corners, shouldn't be peeking around, but I still appreciate. They still get me in the houses, but I just love the design. It's unmatched. It's amazing. And I tend to find myself just stopping every once in a while. Like I'll be in the middle of an event, in the middle of a scare zone, and I'll just stop and I'll just kind of take it all in because it is complete sensory overload. And there's nothing like it anywhere else at any haunt in the U.S. So I've started off as a patron. I still enjoy going. I still have a blast. They still scare me, but I'm looking at the big picture now. Unfortunately I've gone through so many houses that I tend to look for boo holes and things like that. So after a while, your brain kind of trains itself like, oh, somebody's gonna scare me from here. But a couple times a year that they scare the heck out of me, and I might get a message from somebody later like, yeah, I remember you. So yeah.
Well, I think I kind of gave that away already as far as what type of person I am in the houses. Anybody that's listened to me on any of the podcasts, whether it was when I was just a guest or when I became a host, I think everybody knows I'm a big scaredy cat in the houses. So up until this year, I have definitely been an eyes closed, might take a little peek here and there kind of girl in the houses. I usually have to hold on to somebody in front of me, or somebody has to be like right up against me behind me so I feel safe. And yeah, I'm easily scared. I am an obvious target in the houses for sure. However, since starting the Rush of Fear podcast and getting major slack because I was not a diehard horror fan and I'm a scaredy cat, getting a lot of flack from listeners as well as friends, I started trying to make myself watch horror films, and I have found that I am actually kind of addicted to them now. I love them. I watch them almost every day, some type of a horror flick or a horror show, and they don't scare me like they used to. So I think, fingers crossed, this year might be my first year going where I'm able to keep my eyes open and keep my wits about me and actually look around and enjoy the houses more than I have in years past.
I'm definitely the, ooh, that's cool kind of person. Although, of course, I love the scare factors and I, love getting scared. The truth is, after going for 17 years, you sort of become desensitized to it and you can kind of see things coming ahead of time, which is fine with me because that just means I have more time to look around the house and absorb it, because Universal just has this superb craftsmanship that they love to put into the houses where even if you're not getting scared, there's so much to look at and just take in that you're almost okay with it sometimes. The scare zones are much more, it's like a free-for-all out there. Like, kind of they're in the area, but you never know where they're going to come from. So yeah, I'd say like 80% of my scares every year come from scare zones, because in houses, they're good at hiding a lot of them, but after you've gone enough, you can kind of tell when something's about to happen or maybe where it's coming from. Sometimes they get you with like the fake boo holes, which I know they like to do now, which I appreciate because people like me go, oh, there's an actor over there, and then something other completely else happens on the other side and it scares the crap out of you, which I appreciate. But yeah, scare zones, I think, are, for people like me, the place where you get scared the most, because there's the most uncertain factor to it. Like, you kind of know they're there, but you're not always fully aware. Sometimes you're distracted. Sometimes you're too busy watching your friends get scared. And then, karma comes back and hits you. In a house, you're hyper-focused on what's happening. You're in the story. You're in the world. And in the scare zones, you get distracted a lot easier. Maybe you're hungry. Maybe you're looking for the next, Blinky Cup stand or a Twisted Tater. You're distracted.
Now, if you've ever been to Halloween Horror Nights, then you will know what you love about it and what makes you go back every single year, or want to go back every single year. As I said, we don't get to go every year, but I would love to, and it kills me every year that I don't. But unfortunately, a little thing called COVID, distance being in the UK, money being a huge factor, and having little kids for the longest time, those are the things that have had the biggest impact on our inability to go every year since our first visit. But we have made it for Halloween Horror Nights 25 and Halloween Horror Nights 29. But trust me, if we lived closer and we had the funds, I would be there every year. Now, the event as a whole, there are so many things to love about the event. It is not just a scare attraction. For me, the atmosphere is a huge one. Once the sun goes down, the music kicks in, the fog begins, and the scare actors come out, it changes a park that I know like the back of my hand into somewhere I feel like I don't know anymore, that I feel like I could get lost in and not recognize it. Obviously I can't, but there's times when you forget you're in Universal Studios, Florida. It feels like an entirely different place. That is Halloween Horror Nights. Plus, it means I'm in my favourite place in the world, usually with my favourite people in the world. So the next question I ask my guests to elaborate on, taking out of consideration that you are covering it for your vlog, blog, podcast, whatever it may be, what is it about Halloween Horror Nights specifically that keeps you going back year after year?
I guess it's just got to be the same thing. It's just the atmosphere. Like, you walk into those gates and you just feel like you've walked into like Halloween Town, and you bump into all the people you know and your friends and all the relationships you have with, the scare actors, the people that just like travel from all over. And we just have so much fun meeting just so many different people and enjoying telling the stories and just like seeing the sets, again, the scenics, and walking through the scare zones, the fog, the food. I mean, hearing all the screams. It's just a little bit of combination of everything. And being horror freaks as we are, I mean, and as I am, it's just, there's, I guess, no better place to be than there. Because you can just take your time walking around the park, and you can just sit in a scare zone for an hour and just watch people, and it's fun. Well, and then people say, well, how can you go so many nights like throughout the event? And it's like, because it changes every night as well. Like the scares are different. I mean, when you go through a house, the houses seem to get more pumped up as the event goes on. And it just, I don't know. It's just, you get different things pretty much every night you're going. And even in the scare zones, the scare actors are different places or doing different things, or, you just get a different jump scare as you're walking around. It's just crazy. It's just truly amazing how much it changes, like night upon night upon night, and that's why I just go so many nights, and I have so much fun every night. Like I said, I could sit in a scare zone for an hour and just video record people, or just watch people, watch them jump and scream and run. And well, it was like funny, like Killer Clowns, and at the scare zone there, we spent, I don't know how many hours in that scare zone. It was just so crazy. And the characters were amazing, like awesome, hands down. Just, they interacted with everybody like so well and just so great. And they were so happy and eager to take photos and videos with you. And it just adds to like that atmosphere, which is so much fun. I mean, I love it.
This is actually very easy for me to answer. And it is the temporary and fleeting nature of Halloween Horror Nights that makes me and probably most people keep going back. It's the fact that these 10 houses and 5 scare zones, or however many houses and zones there were on whatever year, any given year, with one notable exception, these will only be here this one time. And if you miss them this year, you missed them. They're gone. And so that, combined with the level of care and design and detail that is put into every inch of every one of those houses, to know the amount of work that goes into it, to then just be torn down and start from scratch the next year. It's an experience that I can't really think of anything else that compares to that. And the fact that filming in the houses is not allowed. So there's very few ways to still experience those things, even if you did get to see it and you want to kind of go back down memory lane and see what you saw. The few videos that are out there usually don't really do a good job of capturing it. And, you know, a bad video is honestly your best option because most of them don't have any video of them, you know? So it's just collecting memories, collecting experiences, storing them in your brain. And that's the only place where they exist for the most part. And to have that shared experience with so many people, and especially now with, you know, Twitter and Facebook and all of these communities online of people who have found each other who are like, I thought I was the only person who cared this much about this. And now here's all these people who like, I thought I was passionate about Halloween Horror Nights, and compared to a lot of people on other podcasts and on Twitter and stuff that I've seen, I almost feel like I barely care about it at all. But like, clearly I do really care about it. But like, man, the way that a lot of people are so passionate about this, and yeah, it's because you either saw it or you didn't, and if you didn't, you never will, and you get to just daydream and fantasize about, man, I wonder what that would have been like. It's just, there's nothing else like that. There's nothing else like that. I mean, I was born in, you know, in the Orlando area. I grew up here, and I went as soon as I mean, I don't think it would have been reasonable for me to start going much earlier than I did. I was 15 the first time I went. I definitely never wanted to go before that. I didn't even really want to go the first time that I did go, but I really feel that I lucked out growing up so close to something that's so amazing and that I ended up falling in love with so deeply, you know? I know my sister has gone 3 times and it's not for her. She doesn't like it. She appreciates the sets and the costumes and the makeup. She appreciates all of those things, but she hates being scared. There's nothing about being scared that she likes at all. It's not fun. She hates it. So the last time she went was because I was in Vamp 55 and she could come visit me without having to go through a haunted house to see me. Because when I was in Insidious, she was like, I don't care that you were in there. I would never have gone in to see you. So I was outside and they were doing American Horror Story, which she was a really big fan of. So she said, I'm going to go because I really want to see this house and I want to see my brother, and he's outside and I don't have to go into a scary haunted house to see him. I just finished watching or rewatching all of the movies or everything that's going to be in a house, all the IPs that are at houses. I haven't finished watching all the Crypt TV stuff, and I will, but I just finished rewatching all the house IPs for this year, and watching Texas Chainsaw Massacre this time. I've seen the movie before, and I wasn't really a big fan of it. And watching it this time, I really, again, was just like, this movie is not good. I don't like this movie. And I don't know what it is about it. And then I realized I started thinking like, maybe I really don't care about horror. I only care about Horror Nights. But I think as I was talking about it and The Haunting of Hill House, which I absolutely love, that series to me is, well, it's one of my favorite things I've ever seen. And the thing I love about it is, yes, it's scary. Yes, it's a horror thing, but that's not what I like about it. I like how the horror elements, the horror aspects of it are tied into this story about a family going through grief, going through trauma, trying to understand their trauma, trying to understand their childhoods and what really happened to them, and the emotional elements of that series. And then the horror is kind of accentuating that emotional story. Texas Chainsaw Massacre is just about like 5 teenagers who get killed for no reason, and there's no attachment to any of it. There's no lesson to be learned. There's no story really being told. To me, that's just incredibly uninteresting. I'm not in, like, if there was, and on the flip side of that, the first Saw film, which, yes, it's shocking and gory, but there's a story there. There's an emotional core to it. There's a reason why things are happening to people. And I really like that movie. So it's not just that I don't like gore and, you know, like, I don't mind that. It's just Why? Why is it happening? I need the movie to tell me why this is happening.
The main thing that is always going to attract me to Halloween Horror Nights is at the number one thing. As much as I love Halloween, as much as I love getting scared, the thing that's always going to bring me back is the fact that you have 10 brand new, highly developed, highly designed theme park attractions that go up for a very limited time. And the thing about HHN is, I'm very fortunate to be an Orlando resident. I'm very fortunate to have my frequent fear pass I can stick in my pocket. And if I want to take a nap at 8 o'clock at night and wake up at midnight and go to the park for 2 hours, I have the flexibility to do that, But the thing that's always going to pull me into HHN is the fact that once it's gone, it's pretty much gone. Unless it's a compilation house, unless we get another American Werewolf in London, which we've already discussed, they might not ever do that again just due to the response that American Werewolf in London got when it returned. It's getting something on the scale of a full-time, Universal attraction, a full-time worldwide phenomenon theme park attraction that is only there for just a brief moment in the grand scheme of things. And then it's gone. It's saved for your memories. It's saved for your podcast. It's saved for your vlogs. But you'll probably never see that again. And I think it's the finite life cycle that makes things so beautiful in a way. It's what's going to keep you coming back because it's only getting better as time goes on. And I can't wait to see what it looks like in another 10 years. I mean, you look at things like Revenge of the Tooth Fairy, where Patrick Braillard and those guys, they've worked on that house in various iterations for 3+ years, and it's finally open for people to check it out full time underneath HHN. And now it's going to do its thing, and it's gone from an idea that's going to create a lasting memory with people to, in the next little over a month and a half, almost 2 months, it's gone. And that's the way it is. And there's something tragic about it, but there's also something that's fantastic about it in the element of, in the next 5 years, which one of these houses is going to show up and be represented in the compilation houses they love to do. But that's going to be your little element, unless you get something like a sequel or something like that later on.
I think for me, oh man. See, this is interesting because I worked Dark Horizons last year, so I got to see kind of like what other haunts were besides like Halloween Horror Nights, because Halloween Horror Nights, it's so grand, it's backed by Universal, which is a huge company, lots of money involved, like such a history with it. And so to see the comparison between the two, from like being a guest at Halloween Horror Nights to actually working Halloween Horror Nights, and then seeing kind of how smaller haunts operate, like there's such a, oh man, there's so many things like the history with Halloween Horror Nights that like we've built up through the now 30 years, well, 31 if you count last year, 30 years of this event, the stories and the characters and the places and even the IPs that we've like acquired and been able to turn into basically a walkthrough set of these like TV shows and movies and things like that. Like, it's so cool. It's so cool. And anyone who is a fan of like scary things or haunt TV shows specifically it's just, I don't know. It's the friendships that because as a local, like I've always had the frequent fear. I've had like the team member ID pass to go in all the time. So like the friends that you make through it, constantly seeing, how the houses and scare zones evolve throughout the run of the event. Coming back, like watching Trick or Treat go from a scare zone to a house, like it's just so cool. And even in the 3-4 years that I've been going, just like the stories that have kind of come through in those few years have been great. And like now this year with all of the icons and everything coming back from years previous, like I've never gotten to meet Jack. And now because we have such a history with Halloween Horror Nights, with Jack the Clown, like I don't get to miss out on him because people love him so much and he's such an icon that they're bringing him back after how many years of being away, you know? And like the Welcome to Carrie house, like I'm once again going to get to see stories that I never got to experience the first time around, but because people love them so much and because they have such a storyline and a history with Halloween Horror Nights, like I now get to experience them 5-10 years later. So I think that is something that Horror Nights definitely excels at. And I think that's why people like keep coming back. And like reading that question, like it makes me think of that one video from it was either 28 or 29 that Universal put together, like advertising Halloween Horror Nights. But it was such a fan service video because it had like all the people who played the icons. Like what other haunt can do that? You know, what other haunt can have people begging for a fog scented candle? Like that is the most niche Halloween Horror Nights thing. But I think like if you could describe the fan community of Halloween Horror Nights in a single sentence, it would literally be all we want is a fog scented candle. Like, like we are so weird and unique and just a bunch of oddballs who just like really like this Halloween event that has become so much more than just like a haunted house, you know? There's something about it. There's something about it. And I think it's so cool. It's something that Disney will never have because like, you know, Disney does create original properties and stuff, but like a lot of the times it's based off of something else. Whereas like with Horror Nights, like I'm sorry, we had a house where plants took over the planet. Like what? That is out of the box, left field, random. Like who in their mind would ever think of that? You know, it's our people would think of that because we're crazy. It's fine.
I think the absolute scale of the event, you know, you have all these amazing houses, you have the amazing streets, you have random pillars of fire, you've got the entertainment, you've got the food. I think what kind of keeps me coming back year over year is the entire package deal. Nowhere can you buy a ticket for 2 months out of the year, go and see and hang out with your friends every night, go wait in line for houses with your friends, and buy amazing merchandise. It's a complete package deal. And there's nothing, as far as the experience of going to Halloween Horror Nights, there's nothing like it anywhere. Just the grandiose of the entire event is what keeps me coming back year over year. And I would come back regardless of whether I was running a haunt website or not. If you know, because there's nothing like it. There's absolutely nothing like Halloween Horror Nights. And the event keeps getting better and better every single year.
I can't think of any other event in my life throughout the year that gives me such an adrenaline rush, but at the same time joy, as Halloween Horror Nights does. It makes me scared, but like a nervous scared. But then I'm immediately laughing my head off afterwards, and it's the best feeling ever. It's very addictive. That adrenaline rush is just it's very addictive. But I have visited some local places, and it just doesn't give me quite the same feeling because HHN, Halloween Horror Nights at Universal, they really go above and beyond at this event to make it so incredibly immersive. And so like the sets inside those houses are amazing. The actors, the scare actors are incredible at their jobs. It's very interactive. And also the buzz from the crowd, like I feel like everybody there kind of feels the same way as me and almost feel connected to all the other guests that are there. You know, we're all there experiencing this thing together. And it's you just don't get that. You don't get that during the day when you're standing in line with strangers. You know, there's no connection, there's no excitement, but at Halloween Horror Nights there is, and I can't really explain it, but I usually by the time I'm out of the house, I usually know the people who are in front of me because I have thoroughly, gotten all up in their business, holding on to their backs and burying my head in their backs and grabbing them because I need something to grab because I'm scared out of my mind. So it's just fun. It's fun. We make memories, we make friends. And it's just a great night. I love it.
Well, there are many reasons I go back every year, but for me, I think the biggest one is that it's only there for a limited time. It's not like other haunts, around the world, around the country, where if you miss something this year, you can just come back next year and see it probably. Horror Nights is like a one and done type of thing, where if you miss something this year, the chances of you seeing that thing again next year, slim to none. I think it's only happened like one time with American Werewolf in London. And other than that, I mean, maybe you'll get lucky on an anniversary year and get like a compilation house with scenes from past houses. But if you miss a house one year, it's not coming back next year. I think this year in particular, 2021, is slightly different because of, Horror Nights Light we had last year. So a lot of people, locals, more, just locals really, had a chance to see The Bride of Frankenstein Lives and Tooth Fairy. But that's a rare occasion. I don't think that'll ever happen again, hopefully. But yeah, it's, for me, the biggest one is if you don't do it this year, you're probably never going to see it again. Like, I've been to some smaller haunt events before, and the houses aren't, they don't have the budget, but the houses aren't nearly as, grandiose as the ones at Universal, and they're good. But then you go back the following year, and then the following year, and the following year, and they keep them for 3 to 5 years sometimes. I think like old Howl-O-Scream, like back in the old days, used to do that, where you used to keep a house for years and years and years and years, like unchanged almost. Whereas Horror Nights is kind of like, if I don't go see it this year, it's not going to be there next year. So there's sort of like a sense of urgency to it. I'm sure someone else has already said this as well. It's kind of just like a party, just like a general party in the streets, which I appreciate. I love a good Halloween party. So it's sort of just like the food is great. People are just having fun. It's just something that when it's like last year in particular, when we didn't have it, you realize how much it means to you every year, how much you look forward to it. And other haunts, I've done, a few at this point, and I usually enjoy most of them. They're all pretty good, but there's always something that pulls me back to Horror Nights, and I think it's just the size of it. It's the limited, nature about it. It's the fact that a lot of people I know personally go a lot. So, it's just like a good time.
And that's going to wrap up part 1 of our look at Halloween Horror Nights and why it is such a big deal for a lot of people. We've dug deep into my guests' history and what it is about Halloween Horror Nights that they love. So next time, we will dig into their opinions of the event itself. So I want to say a big thank you to all my guests for taking the time to speak to me. Harry, Kenneth, Johnny, Maddie, Hunter, Michelle and Sean, and I encourage you all to go and check out their YouTube channel, social media, blog, vlog, podcast, whatever it might be. You can find Harry at Freaks of HHN, Johnny over at HauntScene, you can find Hunter at the Catacombs of Halloween Horror Nights, Sean at HNNightmares, and of course, Michelle, Maddie and Kenneth over at our very own Rush of Fear podcast. But for now, I'm going to wrap this episode up just like those guys over at Rush of Fear do, by letting you know that this podcast has come to an end. Now get out.
Guess that wraps things up for another Unofficial Universal Orlando podcast. You guys did all right. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and Pinterest, keyword UUO Podcast. Listen and subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, or anywhere podcasts are found. You can find our blog at uuopodcast.com. Send us your spews, which Lou gets your poo recordings, questions, or comments to podcast@uuopodcast.com. Check out our friends, the Theme Park Duo, and our awesome sponsors, Mouse and Muggle Travel Company. So, until next time, don't give up your day job. Say cheese. See you later.